Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and we're going to be doing a combat guide. So this is going to be just to explain combat, show the different ways that you can engage in combat in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. This is all spoiler free. Everything I'm doing in this video will be very early in the game, so I'm not going to spoil anything, won't show you the map, won't do anything that will spoil the experience. Just going to teach you a little bit about the combat as well as I can in a quick manner. So, in simple terms, the combat in this game is broken down, or I should say in the simplest terms, it's broken down into two different forms, that being melee and range. Melee combat can be completed with a variety of weapons, so it breaks down even further there. You have longswords, which are probably the most well-developed weapon out of them all, but then you have three different other types of swords. Hunting swords, sabers, and they have short swords in here, but arming swords would be the correct term. Then you have heavy weapons, which fall into two categories of axes and maces, and you can use a shield with all of those. So the hunting sword, saber, arming sword, axe, and mace are all one-handed weapons, and those can all be paired with a shield. You can also use them without a shield, but I would say if you're using a one-handed weapon, it's better to have that added benefit of the defense with the shield. Outside of that, for melee weapons, you also have polearms. Now, there's a lot of different types of polearms in this game. You can equip all of them in this game, and unlike the first game, they do not have to be dropped when you're not using them, so they can just be put in one of your weapon slots, and you can always keep them with you. So they're a great option. They give you tremendous reach, and they make a very balanced weapon for both aggressive and defensive playstyles. As far as the other weapons and playstyles go, the longsword is the only other one that can be used very, very effectively with both aggressive and defensive long styles. As for all of the one-handed weapons, they are much better on the aggressive side, especially heavy weapons. Heavy weapons deal a lot of damage, and they're great against armored enemies, but they take more stamina to use. The lighter swords, or the one-handed swords, I should say, are very quick to use, but they do very little damage against armored opponents, so unless you're utilizing more advanced techniques, they're not very effective against armored opponents, whereas heavy weapons and longswords and polearms can be. One thing that has changed dramatically from the first game to this game is the way that it's balanced. So in the first game, most people understood that once you learned how to do the Master Strike, you could pretty much just Master Strike any enemy. In this game, it doesn't work that way. For one thing, only swords can Master Strike, so you cannot Master Strike with a polearm or with an axe or mace. It has to be a sword. And on top of that, you can also be Master Striked by only enemies that are using swords. So if an enemy is using an axe, you know that they cannot Master Strike you. That being said, it also means that every single time you're attacking from the opposite range of another enemy and they're using a sword, you are in danger of being Master Striked if that NPC knows how to do it, so it's something to keep in mind. That makes the longsword the only melee option in the game that really effectively can be used for the method of more ripostes and Master Strikes than the pure aggression and combo-based combat that the rest of the weapons are better for. That being said, the longsword also excels at those, so like I said, just in my opinion, the longsword, especially if you've got one with good stats, is just overall the best weapon as far as melee goes in the game. That being said, if you're not going to get fancy and you haven't learned how to do things like riposte and Master Strike yet, then your heavy weapons are going to be the best bet, especially against heavily armored opponents. The other side of combat in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is ranged combat. And unfortunately, this is early in the game, so I cannot show you all of them, but there are guns, there are three types of crossbows, and then you have, all bows pretty much act the same. You've got longbows and recurve bows, but they're all just bows. They act exactly like bows did in the first game. The crossbows have three different variants, the lightest being ones that you can cock with your hand. They fire quite fast, but they do the least damage. Then you have the field crossbows, which are medium-sized ones. You use a goat's foot, which is just a lever to cock them. They go slower than the first one, but still pretty quick, but they only deal a slight increase in damage over the lighter ones. And then you have the heaviest ones, which you have to actually crank up. Those are heavy siege crossbows. They take a long time to reload, but obviously they deal a lot of damage. Paired with the right bolts, even heavily armored opponents are killed, or at least almost killed with one shot anywhere on their body. So they're very, very effective, and they're very accurate and easy to shoot, but they definitely have a longer reload speed, whereas the bows are, if you have the ones with the right stats and you have good arrows with them, you can do a lot of damage with these. If you're hitting headshots, sometimes you're even getting one-shot kills with them, but they definitely deal a lot less damage than the crossbow. They take a lot more practice to be as accurate with. If you practice enough, you definitely can be just as accurate with the bow as with the crossbow, but it definitely takes a lot more skill, whereas the crossbow is pretty much just point and shoot. The final category category of ranged weapons is one that I have not unlocked yet in this playthrough because this is early, but those are firearms, which you've seen in promotional footage. Those fall into 3 categories: pistols, which are the smallest, weakest ones and the first ones that you get access to, and then hook guns and hand cannons, I believe, was the third category, but I don't remember exactly. So basically there are just a variety of different guns, and they kind of go like the crossbows. They deal a lot of damage. They're very inaccurate. They're kind of hard to use, but up close, especially like point blank against an armored opponent, they're hard to beat because they deal so much damage. If you hit someone with one, it's a one-shot kill, no matter what armor they're using. So the guns definitely have an advantage for that. I have not used them very much in my playthroughs. Aside from that, there are things to consider that I've already mentioned a couple times, like ammunition. All of the ammunition for the different things has different stats. So you can see better hunting arrows are one of the best arrows in the game for bows. They deal 120 stab damage, so that will obviously be better against opponents that have armor that is weak to stab damage. And then we have the piercing bolt, another pretty good bolt for the crossbows, and that one does 110 stab damage. So that is how ammunition works. The firearms, as far as I can tell, only have 2 types of ammunition, but it's possible that I just haven't gotten far enough in the game to unlock the rest of them. But those ones are the regular lead shot and then the lead scatter shot, which kind of acts like a shotgun. So it's a little easier to hit people with that one, but it deals less damage. So that is all of the weapon types in a nutshell. As far as everything else in this game for combat goes, we have lots of different skills. So basically, anyone who played the first game is probably aware, a lot of things play into combat skills. And so all of your main level skills, well, except for speech, will have something to do with it. So there are perks under the main level that will give you combat advantages. Strength gives you direct combat advantages. So does agility, and strength and agility are levels that are required to get to certain levels before you can even use most weapons. So, for example, this longsword I have in my inventory requires level 14 for strength and 14 agility to actually use it effectively. So if you do not have that high of strength and agility, you can't even use that weapon. And the higher it is, the better you will use weapons. So those 2 are the most important as far as your main skills go. Vitality is just important for your life and healing and all that, and energy replenishment and stuff like that. So you definitely want to level up all of those as high as possible, but strength and agility are the 2 that tie in most closely with combat. Other than that, it's all about the specific type of combat you're fighting in. So you can see that from the first game there have been changes, and a lot of that is just things being combined together. So the sword skill is all swords. That's long swords, hunting swords, arming swords, and sabers. That's all in the swords skill. The heavy weapons is all bludgeons and all axes. So maces, warhammers, axes, everything in that category falls under heavy weapon. Polearms have their own category. Unarmed has its own category. And marksmanship is all of the ranged weapons. So your bows, your crossbows, and your guns. They also all, like all of the other skills in this game, have their level caps raised. So they all go up to level 30 now, whereas in the first game, all of them went up to level 20. And Warfare is the overall perk that will have lots of different, I guess, added benefits to it depending on what you're doing. So basically there's no, at least I haven't come up with one yet, ultimate guide for which skills are the best ones to get and which ones to avoid. In most instances, from the skills that I have maxed out in this playthrough and other playthroughs, almost all of them, you can get all of the perks. There's only a couple where it's exclusive and you get one or the other. So for the most part, the perk system in this game is very simple, and it will just you'll get more and more powerful as you level up. Another thing that's changed with combat in this game is that not all weapons act exactly the same. So all of the weapons have different attack zones, essentially. So we'll start off with the longsword, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we've got some humans here. So you can see with the longsword, we get a complete attack zone. So we get our bottom has been combined into 2, but that's just the stabbing option now. So if you want to stab in the game, that is how you do it now. But we otherwise directionally get our attacks all the way around the wheel. But that's just the longsword. Not all of the weapons are like that anymore. The polearms, for example, do not have a top attack. You have a thrust and then a side-to-side strike. So there is a little bit of variation there. We can no longer bring it down from the top, at least with some polearms. I think some of them might allow it if it's more of a hammer or maybe a poleaxe type polearm. But for this one here, the billhook, you can see it acts more as a spear. We're focused more on thrusting. Now we'll quickly go through the sword and shield combos. So we're starting off with the hunting sword. I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see with the hunting sword, we once again have the full directional approach. But this time, of course, we have a shield as an advantage, so that's always good. You can see once again for the saber, we have all of our directions. I was actually, this might be the first time I've used the saber in this game. I was half expecting it not to have a stab option because, you know, I mean, you can stab with a saber, obviously, but it's not nearly as effective as it is as a slashing weapon. So that's sabers. And then for arming swords, we once again have all of our directions. So you can see all of the swords basically act exactly the same. It's just that longswords, you can get a skill later in the game called Beowulf's Arm, I believe, where you can use a shield with a longsword, but obviously it will just not be quite as effective or fast to use as it would be two-handed. The major difference between all the swords and the longsword is you get a lot greater reach with the longsword, and until you get that skill, you cannot use a shield with it. Moving on to heavy weapons, starting out with axes. They definitely work as a pretty happy medium. They swing nice and fast, much like a sword, but they deal pretty good damage. These ones, of course, have removed the stab option. There might be an axe with a spike on it, for all I know. I haven't found one yet, but where you'll get a stab option. But for this one, since there isn't any way that you could stab with this weapon, we do not have one. And so maces follow that same basic rule. Again, we're not stabbing with it because it's not a stabbing weapon. We're just beating the enemy down. And maces are very simple to use. So if you're someone that doesn't enjoy learning how to do combos or timing for master strikes and ripostes and stuff like that, bludgeons and heavy armor are your way to go. You just bash your enemy into submission. So that is bludgeons as far as axes and maces go. And lastly for combat, or at least lastly for this little section, we of course have ranged weapons. So you can see the light crossbow loads very fast and is very easy to do. Plus, I believe you can actually reload it on horseback. And so with a sneak attack headshot to an unarmored opponent, we were able to kill in one shot. That one, we hit a headshot directly head on, and it did not kill him because he has armor on. So, again, it's very fast, easy to use, but doesn't deal very much damage. For our medium crossbow, you can see we have to use the ram's leg to cock it, so it takes a little bit longer than the first one, but is still a pretty fast process. So we had a chest shot there, which did not kill, but it severely damaged him. You can see he's very wounded. Oh, but I missed with that shot. And then lastly, since I can't show a heavy crossbow or guns at this point, we have bows, which, like I said, act exactly like they did in the first game. So you do have to get used to using them, but they fire very fast. Reload time is basically non-existent because it's just your drawing and firing time. And you can get a tremendous amount of damage. Like I said, headshots with these will still usually kill in one shot, provided you're using a bow that's not super weak and you're not fighting against an enemy that's very heavily armed. So they're definitely a lot of fun to use. Mostly starting off the game, I spent a lot of time with the crossbows just because they were new, but the bows are old reliable for me. You know, it's great being able to run into a camp and just rapid fire kill enemies because, you know, you don't have to worry about reload time. But they definitely rebalanced it, so it's not nearly as overpowered because otherwise there would be no point in using the crossbows and gun. But that is it for the different ways that the weapons themselves work. Outside of that, the last thing to talk about is actually going to be back in the skills section, and that is going to be how you actually learn combos and stuff. So in the first game, you unlocked combos through specific training events, but also just skill moves. So you'd use a skill point in the longsword category or whatever, and you could use that to unlock a combo. In this one, you learn them typically from people. Sometimes it'll be story-based, sometimes it's someone you have to search out and find it. And so the different combos can be, and as far as I know, until you've actually officially learned one from someone, it doesn't matter if you do the moves, you can't actually do the combo. So a bit of a realism block there, but it would also make sense that Henry would not know these combos until he was taught them. So from their simplest one, the first one you'll learn, the lower left strike, it'll be a simple left, right, left, and it will then execute the combo. One thing about this game over the first one that I know a lot of people will hopefully enjoy is that it is way easier to land the combos. You don't get interrupted nearly as much, and even if you don't land the strike, if it was in the right movement, sometimes the combo still registered. So it pays to learn the combos in this game because they're actually way more usable than they were in the first game. And as you can see, there are different amounts for all of them. Longswords, of course, have the most because, like I said, the game is, after all, about a longswordman in essence. And as far as our last little tip here for combat, just starting off the game, it's going to start in a town called Troskowitz. That's where you first kind of the world opens up for you and you're able to start doing stuff. And there's a character here that you're going to want to talk to right away as soon as you're able. And that person is right here, and her name is Bara. She's a beggar. You'll be able to talk to her right away. In fact, she kind of waves you over, and she will tell you about a person called Tomcat. You're going to want to seek him out and learn from him immediately because that's where you're going to learn some of your opening combos. You'll learn a little bit more about combat, and I believe he even teaches you how to perform master strikes. So that's it. That is my combat guide for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I wanted to do this in a way that didn't take ridiculous amounts of time, but also explained pretty much everything there was to performing combat in this game. Obviously, the other side of it is just making sure you have good good armor that protects you well. I'm planning on doing an armor video all on its own because there's so much to talk about there, but the other side of combat, other than everything I've talked about today, is obviously your armor value. So that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll be able to get this out to you before the game even releases, so maybe you'll be able to have some experience going into it and not going blind. But that's all for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.